Hey, this is the Fight Nerd, and joining me today is the daughter of Bruce Lee and head of the Bruce Lee Foundation, as well as executive producer of the upcoming documentary I Am Bruce Lee, Miss Shannon Lee. Shannon, how are you today?
I'm great, thanks. How are you?
I'm good. Now, let's just get right into this film. I had a chance to watch it. It's definitely one of the best Bruce Lee documentaries I've seen, if not the best. So can you tell us, in your opinion, what makes this film unique from all the other documentaries that have been made about Bruce Lee?
I think there are a couple things that make this piece really unique. First of all, it's really done really well. It's very filmic in the sense that you don't get the sense that it's a bunch of people being interviewed in hotel rooms and there's, like dry voiceover sort of saying, and then this happened, and then this happened. It still tells the story of his life very beautifully and weaves it through the piece, but it's all through the voices of the people who knew him and the people who've been inspired by him. And there's a lovely sort of quality to the film that it has sort of this unifying look and feel. And I think that the director, Pete McCormack, did a great job of really, digging deep and asking salient questions and getting some emotion to come through, and also offering up a variety of opinions. So I think it's a really beautifully woven together piece that's not just an A to B story. It goes above and beyond that, and also is touching, I think.
Yeah, we just spoke with Pete McCormack, in fact, earlier about the film, and that was one of the things he also liked was the little stories that every other person contributes to the story of Bruce Lee, essentially. Would you agree with that? That's really, in this case, it's the stories of the other people that have been affected by Bruce that have really made this documentary so powerful.
Yes, I agree. It's one thing to, you get sort of, in a way, a much more complete picture because you don't just get the picture from people who knew him or worked with him, but you also get to understand him through his legacy in a way, through what he's left behind and the way he's influenced people who didn't know him.
Now, the documentary features a ton of different people from not just martial arts, but from film, dance, music, and all sorts of different walks of life. So why do you believe that Bruce has been able to reach so many people who have done so many different things that aren't exactly martial arts?
I think it's because, he was a very deep thinker and he wrote quite a bit. And, primarily he was focusing a lens on martial arts, but he was also just focusing a lens on himself as a person. And so a lot of his philosophies, I think, they speak to everybody, on sort of a very personal and individual basis because they're about life and how to meet life head on and how best to, walk through life. And they're also, when it comes to physical movement, it's really a lot about, how to look at physical movement, which can be applied to any sport, not just martial arts. And so I think you have athletes and then you who are inspired by his thoughts on physical movement and a philosophical approach to that, and efficiency of movement and all that sort of thing. And then you have people who are also just influenced by his philosophical thoughts on life and self-actualization and honest self-expression and all those things that we can apply to ourselves no matter who we are.
With so many people in this film, like Ray Boom Boom Mancini, Mickey Rourke, Ed O'Neill, Taboo from the Black Eyed Peas, people like that discussing how Bruce affected their lives, which person that was interviewed here would you say had the most powerful or surprising reaction about Bruce that you heard?
That's a good question. It's really hard to say for me because everybody's description is very personal to them, and that's what I love about it. I love hearing, the personal influence that they've had in their lives, and so, I think it's all very interesting to me that all these different people have been so affected by him. I love listening to Taboo talk about the way that my father had influenced him as a performer and just as a person too. And I thought Reggie Hudlin had a lot of really great things to say as well. Everybody had really wonderful things to say. It would be hard to pick just one.
And also, you guys spoke with a lot of MMA and UFC fighters in this documentary, including guys like John Jones, Kung Lee, Stephan Bonnar, and Gina Carano.
Mm-hmm.
And one of the things discussed in the documentary is whether or not Bruce is technically the father of mixed martial arts. And I know you've discussed this on your blog before as well, and in the film. So what's your opinion on whether or not Bruce was the father of mixed martial arts?
Well, obviously that's a moniker that comes in hindsight, right? I mean, he certainly at his time wouldn't have, he would have said, let's mix martial arts. But, here's what I think. And I think that the documentary is interesting because it talks about other people who were also experimenting with the notion of looking into more than one art. And my feeling of it is this. My father definitely was interested in the notion of being a complete fighter and being from top to bottom and being able to defend and attack in any situation in which you found yourself. And he also believed that in order to do that, you couldn't just stay inside one box and only know one style of fighting. At the same time, I would say that Jeet Kune Do is something that instead of looking at it as a combination of many arts, which is really what mixed martial arts is, it's really more about distilling things down to the most simplistic forms of movement, and whether those are grappling movements or stand-up fighting movements. And so, on the one hand, he created a style or a movement of martial arts that was about personal freedom, which is I think, indicative of where mixed martial arts came from, about needing to be a complete fighter from top to bottom. Now it does it more through the study of specific combination of arts. A lot of people are doing jiu-jitsu and Muay Thai and what have you into their arsenal. They're not necessarily breaking it down into a more free expression than that. But as to the other people who were looking into these types of things at the same time as my father, I think the thing that can be said is that my father shared what he was doing with the world. And that's the difference. And that's why he's called the father of mixed martial arts. Because what he was doing and what he was thinking about, he was writing about, he was sharing it, he was teaching it, he was putting it out there into the world, and that's why he's remembered today, and that's why I do believe that the line can be traced back to him.
Now, you personally are also a fan of mixed martial arts fighting, correct?
I am, yes. I like to go to the fights.
So who are some of your favorite fighters right now?
I love to go to the fights. I don't follow, real super closely. I think John Jones is great. I have a lot of respect for GSP, but I think there are a lot of great fighters out there. Anderson Silva obviously is an interesting one, and but I'm not like the guys in my office. Like, they can tell you every single fighter and his stat, and who he's going up against and what the chances and odds are and all that sort of thing. I just really love to go and appreciate the fights and watch them, but I don't follow real closely.
Would you like to make an early prediction on the John Jones versus Rashad Evans fight, maybe? Tough questions.
Gosh, I don't know. I haven't really been looking at where those guys are at the moment. So I'm probably going to refrain.
All right. Well, we'll ask again in a few months when the fight's ready to happen.
There you go. You can get back with me then.
All right, now, also definitely something we want to talk about is the Bruce Lee Foundation opened up a new museum last year. So just tell us a little about what the Bruce Lee Action Museum is and where it's located.
The museum is not actually open yet. What
not
we
yet.
announced was the kickoff for the building of the museum. So actually, in October of last year, we had our initial fundraiser, and it was a smaller one, just to sort of begin the process, raise a little funds to start the process of building toward ultimately creating the Bruce Lee Action Museum in the Seattle area. The Bruce Lee Action Museum is going to be much more than a memorabilia museum. Of course, there will be memorabilia, and his library of books and writings and all of that will be on display. But the overall and overarching theme of the place will be the notion of action. And I think that one of the reasons that my father's legacy is so remembered today is because he was such a master, if you will, at putting his thoughts and beliefs into action and testing those and cultivating them and learning from his mistakes and being sort of the ever ongoing student. So he really. Action is really something that he exemplified throughout his life, and really, to me, is his legacy, whether it's martial action or filmed action or social and cultural action, the ways in which he, dealt with prejudices and expressed his Chinese culture out into the world, or whether it's philosophical action, his thoughts on self-actualization and on a self-expression. And it's really going to be an educational facility that looks at the notion of action in all its different forms as expressed through his legacy. And I'm really excited about that. Because I think that it'll be a really beautiful place when it's finished. But we are having our big major capital campaign fundraiser on November 3rd in Seattle of this year. We're just putting that together and planning that. And I'm actually going to be up in Seattle on the 9th next week for the premiere of I Am Bruce Lee and doing a Q&A afterwards, right after we have our planning meeting for the fundraiser. So it's going to be an exciting place when it's ready.
Yeah, I'm definitely looking forward to checking it out once it is set up, and also looking forward as well. 2013 is also going to be the 40th anniversary of Enter the Dragon, the film that really basically changed the way Americans look at martial arts films. So are there any plans you could discuss at this early phase to celebrate the anniversary of that film?
That's something that we're just starting to talk about right now, because 2013 is coming up, but definitely we will be celebrating the 40th anniversary of the film, and it'll also be, of course, the 40th anniversary of my father's passing. So you can definitely expect there to be some events, and we're just starting to reach out to Warner Brothers to see if there's something that we can do together in celebration of the film. So I would say stay tuned and follow us on our site or on our Facebook or Twitter and what have you, and we will definitely be letting people know about that.
Oh, I definitely hope that something does happen in theaters. I was too young, unfortunately, to see any Bruce Lee films in theaters, so I'd really love to see them, nowadays, especially with a whole new generation to be able to watch it.
Yeah, that would be great. That really would be great.
Now, just speaking from the heart personally as well, I've always admired you and your mother for the strength when it comes to doing so many interviews about your father, and I just wanted to ask, what does it mean for you to see his legacy continue on in such a positive way so many years after his passing?
It's really quite an amazing thing, because it's been really an evolution for myself and for my mom as well. I remember my mom always saying that, my father passed away before Enter the Dragon came out in theaters. And so, of course, when the movie came out, there was a big, it was very successful, and so there was a big uproar, oh, who is this Bruce Lee guy? And, oh, no, he's passed away. And then his Hong Kong films were released, around the world, and so for a while, there was this continued interest in him, even though he had passed away. But my mom always thought, well, that's going to die down at some point because he's not here. But it's been sort of a period of adjustment for us all these years to come to understand that, in fact, no, it's not dying down, and that it really has become, for me anyway, quite an inspiring thing for me, and an honor to be able to keep his legacy, which I view to be such a very positive and inspiring legacy, going and out there for, people to encounter and to learn from and to come into contact with all these years later, and hopefully for many more years to come.
And on that same topic, I mean, why do you think Bruce Lee is still so relevant nearly 4 decades after his passing?
He was really, no surprise, I guess, in a way, but he was really ahead of his time. He was thinking about things and creating things that really only now are really starting to become are really now coming to the fore. Mixed martial arts being a great example. Things that we take for granted now, like protein shakes and sparring, protective sparring gear and stuff, didn't exist back when he was when he was doing all of that and creating that and designing his own exercise equipment and really looking at philosophy and integrating it with martial arts and all these sorts of things. So he was really quite ahead of his time, but and so in that way, we're in some ways just starting to really understand his influence and really starting to be able to integrate it into our lives. But really what I believe is that the reason that we remember him today is because he was a person who was very interested in expressing who he was. He was very interested in his own uncovering the evolution of his own journey and then sharing that with the world. And because he shared that with us, and because the person, he was sort of always inserting himself and his philosophies into everything that he did, and it was coming from a very authentic place. And I think that we continue to remember him today because what you see when you look at Bruce Lee is a completely individual and unique expression that he put out there. And there's never been anything like it, and there never will, because it's purely him.
I'm positive all my listeners out there are going to totally agree with that statement because it's absolutely true. Now, to all my listeners out there, you can check out I Am Bruce Lee in theaters near you on a limited release this February. And if you do miss it then, you can check it out on Spike TV in March. Shannon, thank you very much for speaking with us today.
Thank you.